Up for review today is the Coros watch, but with Evo Lab activated. So I did a full review. I'll post it in the link below along with timestamps for this video. But I did a full review of the Coros Pace 2, or just the Coros family in general, for what stats you get now that they've inserted Evo Lab. They've made this requirement. And what we saw in the running, the non-runners video, if you're not going to accumulate a bunch of hours, and we'll talk about how many hours you have to get, what you see is just a bunch of minimal stats. You don't get a lot of information. We're evaluating this watch for the purpose of CrossFit training. Everything on FitGear or the YouTube channel and fitgear.com website is for the purpose of tracking devices for the purpose of CrossFit training. So if you like it, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing for more. A number of great reviews are at. I'm going to compare this to the 245, which is pretty much a direct comparison for another watch on the market for how you could use it for training for CrossFit. But Evo Lab, if you're not a runner and you're not going to accumulate the running time, you do not get training specifics activated. That doesn't mean you don't get recovery time, you don't get load details and a load estimate of your impact of previous workouts on your long-term averages. You don't really get full fatigue levels. So it is missing all the primary contents if you're not going to run. So what is the run requirement? I think I ran 28 miles, but what I looked at in the stats is you actually have to run 300 minutes. So 300 minutes of running. It has to be on smooth pace. It actually won't count the workout. You have to use the running profile or the track running profile, but it won't count the workout if you do any kind of interval trainings. If you go from high intensity, like if your heart rate fluctuates too much, it's going to be like that doesn't qualify. As well as you have to run at least 10 minutes in a session from what I can read. So you have to do 300 minutes, at least 10 minutes in a session at each time, and it's got to be level, sort of monotonous running for any of the training load or statistics to evaluate. Now the watch is shooting for the goal of evaluating you as a runner. So it wants to get a baseline of you as a runner. We are tracking for CrossFit tracking, and so we need the statistics for training load. We need the statistics for fatigue. We need the statistics for recovery time. So what does it look like once you get all the statistics, and how does it compare to, let's say, another primary contender on the market when it comes to tracking training load, when it comes to Garmin? So we're going to look at how the training or the Evo Lab, what it shows you as far as your training load, your fatigue, your recovery time on the watch and on the app. We're going to look at it as it compares to Garmin's training load, where you see that on the watch, on the app. We're going to see some of the stats that you see on the watch and on the app. So let's get into what the Evo looks like. Okay, so the main Coros landing page, you can see obviously the details at the top and all the different primary bits of information down below, and the main, the workout history here. We just looked at some workouts, but the training load. So this is the Evo Lab assessment of how much training load you're under. So you can see, like in the middle, the top information is just for runners, really not relevant to CrossFit. The middle information, where you see fatigue, is actually pertinent, and we'll look at the charts in a second. And you can see, obviously, on the load calculation, the recommended range is in the middle, sort of the light blue, and then the amount of load that I've been under is in the top line. So if we look at some of the graphs, this is how the graphs look. You can see the fatigue changing over time. So the fatigue decreased on a lighter exercise day and then increased with the workout today. Base fitness slowly increasing. So you'll see that trend over time. We can watch base fitness grow and increase. And then if we go into the 7-day load, or just the load over time, you can see the load peaked out today with a huge load score jump, but then the range of loads that the goal would be to stay within to sort of optimize your... Okay, so what do we see on the watch now that the Evo Lab is activated? You have to get out of the lock screen, of course, but what we can see is you got running performance. You can go into that and you can see your race predictor. I am not a fast runner. I did not do these runs fast, so yes, my race predictor is terrible, and the overall average minutes per mile. So last run performance is 100%, and that was the last time I did it like 2 weeks ago. So race performance shows good, whatever. But the fatigue level. So this is where you can see your base fitness is how you're growing your fitness over time, and that is affected by your training load, the overall training load that you're experiencing with each workout and the load impact, as well as the fatigue level. So you can't see a whole lot, but here we can see, just like on a Garmin watch, you can see your 7-day load total and when each workout, how much each workout contributed to the load total. So the 4-week distribution, your recent training load was excessive risk of injury, because it was brutal. And so that is actually helpful. You can click into that. So that's the fatigue. You go into the fatigue, you see your load and your details there. So it's actually super useful information, really well laid out. Fatigue. Okay, so the next major screen is the recovery time. So this is that brutal workout, and it's showing I'm barely recovered. Please rest. Please take some time off. 77 hours to hard training. What this shows on this screen always is it shows your length to basic training, and if you click into it, it'll say 87 hours to full training. It's typically like a 10-hour, 11-hour difference between the primary suggested rest time and then all your other workout details. All the other stats or details basically from the regular watch. So this is what you get once you activate. So your running performance, and you can click into that for more stats. Your fatigue, you click into that for your training load and stats around your training load, and then your recovery time, you click into that for overall suggestion for how much time you should work out. So these are the primary pieces of information you see once you have Evo Labs, and this is just all basic widget stuff outside of the actual workout evaluations, the information per workout, each device. So this is the stats you get, which is super helpful. So what does the workout show us after the workout on the watch? What is appearing now on the Coros watch? Now the Evo Lab is activated, but also just what does the workout evaluation show? Because we have some newly populated fields. So finally we're getting some information as far as training effect on the aerobic and anaerobic, the actual load value, as well as the recovery time. All of that is missing if you haven't activated Evo Labs, and all of that appears on the workout or on the watch post-workout in your workout evaluation. And then we can also see how the main fields are changing on the watch when you go through those primary widgets. Well, I'm also going to show you compared to like a Garmin watch and how the Garmin system looks, as well as on the apps, on the Coros app, what you would see in a workout evaluation versus in a Garmin. So let's look at just a primary CrossFit workout, and then next we're going to look at a rigorous CrossFit workout, a long sort of enduring workout, and how the impact shows on the watch and on the evaluation metrics.
Okay, so this is what you see on the Coros. Now that Evo Labs is activated, calories, time, and average heart rate. Then you see your training load details. So it's giving it a medium workout, strength training effect 2.7, and the anaerobic 4.3. So I'm getting a lot more focus on anaerobic, max heart rate, average heart rate, the heart rate graph, time in the zones, calories, and then the other thing that's important is recovery time. So this, from a little bit heavier of a load, recovery time has jumped up. I've never seen more than 17 hours. And in this workout, I think with an average heart rate of 134 and a spike of 175, and then the training effect, the anaerobic being so high and the training load even just being a medium is giving a ultra high recovery time. So that's just something to pay attention to. When you max out one of the areas of training effect, I guess it's going to jump the recovery time up. All right, so this is what you see on the Garmin system when you get done with the workout. You see the time, calories, your training effect, aerobic and anaerobic, and the label for it. Recovery time, 27 hours from that workout, and it adds in whatever workouts were previous. Training status shows just your overall training plan, and then back to start. So this is the cardio, which I've converted into a CrossFit workout, and you can see the types of information after a workout. It's a little bit different format and layout than when you pull up the same thing in the history.
Okay, so this is the same workout that we just saw on the watch, and you can see the time, you can see the load there in the middle right, the heart rate graph, and then the training effect. So you don't get a recovery time in the workout itself, but this is how the information looks on the Coros device. This is whether you're using the Evo Lab or you've activated it or not. And if you compare that to a Garmin, so this is like the landing page. One thing that's special to note is the Garmin now adds the laps back in. That was sort of a disappearing field. So you have the heart rate, the training effect. It's interesting to see the training effect is highly aerobic or more on the aerobic scale.
than it was on the Coros, and here you have the anaerobic scale, but you get the same sort of information except for you get respiration rate, temperature. Those are not factors to the Coros.
So we can see there's a lot of great primary content that's now appearing on the watch. It's actually super useful for CrossFit training. It's tragic you have to build that many running hours, but either way, that's just sort of what you have to do. But now we can look at a super strenuous workout. How does the Evo Lab evaluate a strenuous workout? How do all the metrics change? How does the load calculation, the aerobic and the anaerobic training effect evaluated, and the recovery time needed? So we're going to look at it on the watch in the Coros and on the app of the Coros, but we're also going to compare it to what it would compare to in a similar field on a Garmin watch with tracking the same training load, aerobic and anaerobic and recovery time, as well as in the app itself.
Okay, so this is what you see on the Coros after that workout. The same average heart rate, because I was both connected to a chest strap. Training load 223. I haven't gotten anywhere close to that, so it's definitely picking up the rigor of the workout. Training effect is only 3.1. This is the first time I can see that you can actually get to a 6. So I got a 5.4 on anaerobic. Now, if you look at the workout itself, max heart rate, it was like 3-minute AMRAP with 3-minute rest in the beginning with the short hills in the front. And then the back was 800-meter run, 50 wall balls, and 20 single arm devil's presses, 3 rounds. So it was just sort of continuous work for 30 minutes. So I don't know how they're gauging that, an anaerobic workout, although it was depleting my muscle fibers and I was coming to failure in all those movements. But the other thing that's interesting is recovery time says 4 days till full recovery. And then when you go into the watch itself, just to get the recovery time in the short version, so I'm back up to 100% fatigue level, base fitness went up, load impact went up, recovery time, I'm at 0%. And then it says 86 hours till hard training, and then 96 to full recovery, so 4 days. So 3.5 days till recovery. So I'm at 0%. So that's what happens after a hard workout. The Coros is picking it up. Okay, so this was an incredibly hard workout with a 30-minute Metcon. You can see an hour and 4 total, but the average beat per minute is 148. Aerobic training effect on the Garmin is 4.9 with a max score of 5. Recovery is saying 72 hours or 3 days. And then it's just saying general training status productive. So that's what you see on a cardio or your own custom created cardio copied activity profile. Again, this workout was a brutal one. So you can see the average heart rate 148, just kept in the red line for a long period of time. A lot of minutes accumulated in the highest threshold. And it's interesting because the anaerobic training effect impact is just 5.4 out of 6. So it's like at the peak, but the aerobic, and this was a workout with obviously running wall balls, you know, for the most intense part, running in wall balls and devil's press. And if you compare that to what you're seeing on the Garmin, so you get the basic stats. So you see the heart rate graph and the training effect, maxing out the aerobic and then minimizing sort of lesser on the anaerobic. So Coros is tracking sort of oppositely, but this is like 4.9 out of 5. Both watches obviously showing incredibly long recovery time. And you can see the rounds for time now appearing back in the Garmin system itself.
So what do I think of the Evo Lab now that it's activated? This whole review is to review the Coros Evo Lab relative to other things out there, but just also standalone by itself and somebody that's doing CrossFit or high intensity interval training. So I really do like the stats that now appear on the watch. I think that they're relevant, they're useful. You see your training load just boom, first, front, and center. You see your aerobic and anaerobic workout, and you can see your recovery time. As well, on the watch, on the primary widgets, we can now see primary information. The running is useless because I've not done any running since I accumulated the number of hours, and suddenly it was all activated. So I haven't accumulated that, but you can see your fatigue level and you can see your training load. It is going to take more time to track it over a longer period of time to see if it really is showing me more. But finally, I do think Coros is evaluating load over time versus what they were previously doing. It's super tragic that you have to run for 300 minutes in order to get all these stats to appear, because I don't think it's a requirement maybe to evaluate your running, but let's just say you should have an option to say, I'm not a runner, I don't want to evaluate my running, just start the Evo Lab now and tell me my training load and overall base fitness. Maybe make me go out on a run to get my VO2 max and then be done with it so that I can just move on with training and other elements, other exercise aspects. So what do I think of it? I do think the stats on the watch and the recovery time, I mean, the recovery time it was high on that super hard workout, but it was super high on the Garmin watch as well. So it's not different. It's not showing me anything that I haven't seen, or, you know, it is all sort of relevant to another primary training device out there in the Garmin system. The information is not visibly clear. It's not fantastic. So when you plop to the chart on the side to see the fatigue, to see the base fitness, to see the load impact of the workouts or of the workouts over the last few days, and then to see your training load, it's not terribly great that it has to flop back and forth. Don't love that, but it does compare really well to what Garmin's doing in their training. You have an optimal zone, and you have where you're at in your current training, where you're at, if you're above, if you're, you know, overreaching or underreaching. But what it doesn't do super well, or should be watched, is the difference between aerobic training effect and anaerobic training effect. Like that hard workout was a 30-minute grinder with running, wall balls, and devil's presses. So it's like a burpee with a, you know, dumbbell snatch. So it wasn't super, I mean, it wasn't super like gritty hard in like super like anaerobic training. It was more of an aerobic training with different modalities tested throughout, and it gave me like through the roof anaerobic estimate, anaerobic score, and a lower aerobic score. On the flip side, we saw Garmin give it through the roof aerobic score, which is what the workout felt like, and sort of a baseline anaerobic score, which maybe the 3 minutes on, 3 minutes off AMRAPs would have implied on the anaerobic side. Both of them is showing training time, but the aerobic versus anaerobic, it's going to be uncertain to say if it's actually giving a good evaluation of how your fitness is growing on the anaerobic versus aerobic to be able to evaluate if you're growing trends over time. And then obviously to see the training load over time, it doesn't tell me if I'm overtraining. It just shows me that my line is over my optimal line, but it doesn't set off any any bells or whistles like we could see on a Garmin, where it's just saying, hey, you're productive, you're overtraining, you're undertraining, or you're just maintaining. So in the productive phase, you're really growing your fitness. You are pushing your fitness level. In the overreaching or, you know, at risk for injury, you can see a label where it's telling you your training status and where it fits in, how it compares to the green bars where your current level, you know, where the white dotted line is. So it's not giving me like a summary information other than just telling my fatigue level is super high. So the fatigue level is where you have to sort of glean that and grasp that. But overall, I really wish Coros would focus on their sleep tracking, because their wellness is basically like I could wear this watch just for workouts and get useful information and then wear whatever I want to outside of it. So it is a great device for that, because I do think it's tracking more in-depth fitness. They had failed on the training load tracking in previous renditions. So they would give you training effect and recovery time, but they didn't show your training graph. The recovery time wasn't clearly or easily visible, as well as the aerobic and anaerobic wasn't visible on the watch after a workout. You just got your base stats, and you had to go into the app for that. So they've revamped all that. So all those things are great, but they have got to work on the wellness. So I'll never switch from a Garmin, because I don't get any real like health evaluations from the watch outside of the workouts. The sleep is just a jumbled mess, as well as there's no wellness like for like heart rate variability or stress levels or things like that. And any of the watches that do pulse ox or blood oxygen tracking are only really useful for high altitude training, because it's just doing a spot check, not really tracking your breathing throughout a night's sleep. It's not useful. So that is the review for the Coros Evo Lab. It's the Fit Gear Hunter. Thanks so much for watching.